Hey, Salon de France, wonderful to be with you. Today we have the honor to have Kay Wilson, and I will tell you a bit more about her later on. But right now I want to share something with you. We don't speak so often about Islam, but today we want to speak about political Islam. And we know that everybody is made in the image of God, and we are all precious. But we have to fight some ideology, and today we are going to speak about that especially. I have a story of Tzvi Yechezkeli. He's an Israeli Middle East expert, and he's also an Arab affair commentator, okay? And he made his story when he began to reveal the inside working of the outgoing Islamic revolution. And this is what's happening in Europe, and also specifically, he's done specifically work in France, but it's an Islamic revolution, and we need to know that. Okay, he said also, like the French people, they are naive and innocent, and I know we live in the UK, and we know that many of the British people also are naive and innocent. They don't know what's happening with their neighbors who are Muslim and have a very violent Islamic way of looking at the world. And they want to fight against our Judeo-Christian way of living, and we need to wake up. It's not the problem just of our politician, it's our problem too, and we need to do things. And Tzvi was saying also he heard from an Israeli expert from the intelligence of Israel, and he was saying, you know what, the Islamic State is a pimple, but the Muslim Brotherhood is a cancer. And if you remember the history, the Holocaust is not so far away. Churchill, and we watched with my husband a very good film, and Kay was telling me she watched also the film, The Darkest Hour, a very good film, which is a very short time of Churchill's life, right at the beginning when he goes back into the government, the British government, and there is a lot of appeasement among the politicians. But he goes into the underground, and the people are saying, no, we want to fight, okay? And we need to wake up, and we need to fight and act justly for what is precious in our life. So today we have Kay Wilson. Kay, thank you for coming, because you are a survivor of a terror act, which was, it was just horrific. You had a friend who died next to you, few feet away from you, and you are a survivor, but I would say you are also a conqueror, because you are not just living with your past, but you have energy in you to change the world. And maybe it's that also will make you carry on and be able to do, to live. It's a great honor to have you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I would be pleased that our friends all around the world, we know what you are doing, and what they can do, because it's what we want to speak about today.
Okay, well, I'm not quite sure where the conversation is going to go, so I think it's proper to offer a disclaimer in this environment of political correctness, okay, where anybody can be arrested these days for thinking thought crime. But yes, it was a Muslim surgeon that saved my life. I've hid Muslim teenagers in my house. I'm working with Muslims to counter the incitement in the Palestinian Authority, and I have many Muslim friends. That being said, okay, and you've named it correctly, there is something which is, it's like a big black fog, and it's descending upon Europe, and I like to call it stealth jihad, all right? And this is a political ideology where Muslims want to establish Sharia law. And
they have done already a lot in the UK.
They have, and they're doing it slowly. How do you do it? First of all, you lie, and you say that there's, Islam, this kind of political Islam, is a peaceful religion. The fact that they chop people's arms off and they behead people, and what happened to me in the name of Islam, it doesn't seem to affect the opinions of those in power. So on one hand, there's like a stealth jihad, where these people will get into government institutions and hoodwink the major publics. And on the other hand, you have terrorism. You have, let's say, in my birthland, Britain, you have people, British Muslims, hopping off to the Middle East to fight for ISIS. And more disturbing is that when they come back, the British government let them in. Now, if you're talking about this like Islamic ideology of conquest, which is what is happening. You mentioned that the officials or the people are naive. I would say it's not just...
Oh, sorry, I didn't say the politicians, because I think the politicians, they know things, but they are not doing anything. I speak more about the public, which don't know things, or some who are aware we are not doing enough things to touch our governments. Do you
Yeah,
believe
no,
that?
I think that's true. I think the public, as I see it, I might be wrong, but the public are very divided. There's the let's all be quiet and love everybody and light candles, and then there's the no, we are losing the Western civilization. So I think there's a real paradox here, a division. Look, it's kind of ridiculous, because when there's a terror attack that's carried out in the name of Islam, and I watch the media very carefully, like the first response, it's like let's all get Islamophobic, you know. And then
they twist how they say the things. They are saying the facts, but they are twisting it in a way that people don't see the importance. I mean, the horrible things that is done.
Well,
and usually they will say killing and not murder, which is not. It's a murder. It's not a killing.
And it's very good that you brought up that point. There's a huge moral difference between somebody who's intentionally hacked to death or run over, which would be murdered, than somebody who's killed it or who loses their life in a military reprisal. Okay, and that's killed. Somebody's killed in a road accident.
Exactly.
Somebody dies of cancer. But people who are targeted as random acts of political terror in the name of Islam are murdered.
Yes, and it's not written in the media. It will be a killing most of the time.
It's not even concerning Israel. You know how many terror attacks we have in this country. Many of them are not even covered, and if they are covered, it will say stuff like, especially the BBC, and I feel quite at liberty to name these people, but it will say like 3 Palestinians killed following stabbing in Jerusalem, okay? So there's disinformation, misinformation, and it's very misleading. And I don't know if it's mendacious, I don't know if it's intentional, but I do find it dangerous.
I tell you, if you want to say the truth, the door is wide open for journalists to get out. They can't speak. So it's because of that you see some social media and people who come out of the main media to be able to speak. Or there is a Christian media like CBN who is speaking about the things because they want to stand for justice. But all the main media, they don't want to say the thing. Now, you've been also, which is terrible, here in Israel, the taxpayer in the world, America, UK, Australia, EU, their taxpayer, the money from them is given to terrorists here in Israel from the Palestinian Authority. And you are fighting that. And I think this is very courageous of you. You would say, well, let me live my life now. But you are doing something about it. So can you speak a bit?
Concerning, yes, you're right, European taxpayers are funding terrorism because there's something called foreign aid, and I'm not against foreign aid, all right, but foreign aid is given to the Palestinian Authority, who by their own admission pours a generous percentage of these millions of pounds and dollars and euros into a fund for their so-called martyrs. Their martyrs are people who've murdered Jewish people, and sometimes in the case of
freedom fighters.
Freedom fighters, yeah. Okay. Now, in the case of America, President Trump has made moves, and the Senate and the Congress, through the Taylor Force Act, to put a stop to that. So we'll leave America aside. But if we look at Britain, look, it's an ongoing process, and I certainly wasn't. I'm certainly not alone in this. I mean, this is like years of people who've been investing. So I just happen to be, because I've been stabbed, the main voice.
Exactly. So you can have more power in one way, saying, "Look, I'm one of the survivor."
Yeah, but they're and so what's gone? There's been an exchange of emails. I wrote to every single MP. Most of them just asked me for my zip code, and because I wasn't a constituent. So I wrote back saying, I thought you'd be interested in the misuse of British funds rather than what my zip code is.
Because you are still a British citizen.
Yeah, although I haven't lived there for like 30 years.
Yeah,
but
sure,
of course
but
I'm still a British citizen, but
exactly.
I'm not resident.
No,
But
sure.
I think it's kind of a pathetic excuse.
But they should, yes, it is, because when you see the thing, if you are a nation and you have some citizen, even if they don't live in the land itself, they are still British citizen.
Forget me, Natalie, forget me. There was Hannah Bladen who was murdered. She was a British Christian, okay? There was Mary Gardner was a British Christian. Both these people were murdered because they thought they were, the terrorists thought they were Jewish. So even if you're looking at me and saying, I'm not a resident, okay, what about the other two women? So there's been negligence. It's an ongoing process. That I'm like a Rottweiler, I'm not going to let it go. I've called for an external inquiry into this committee that distributes funds. And I think they're getting a little bit sweaty under the collar, and rightly so. Good. Because I saw the other day, following the murder of a rabbi by Palestinian terrorists, I saw one of these MPs actually tweet something. So he said, I condemn terrorism. Now, that's the first time he's ever tweeted something like this. So I wouldn't want to judge how, honest he is about his motives or feelings, but I think that tweet came out of a pressure that he knows that people are on their back, and there's going to be an inquiry, and this atrocity of funding cold-blooded murders, unrepentant murders, has to stop.
And also, I saw in the media, I don't know which media it was. It's more again like the side media who really start to speak really against about Islam and all of that. And they were speaking that not only they give them some money, but more you kill Jews, more you have money. And it's just like, and this is again taxpayers who are working very hard. And we speak about the UK because you are in the UK, but it's all Europe. Is America, is Australia, because in Australia they start also to have trouble also over there. I mean, it's all around the world, I would say. So what you are doing is great, and we need to say, listen guys, we need to do things. You need to lobby, you need to be part of some, like Stand With Us is great also because they do things. We need to come together and do something coherent and fight this thing. As you say, our politicians, if we put pressure, they have to do something.
You would think.
We need, I mean, it's
hope.
like the interesting thing when I see like Churchill, it was like people didn't like him, didn't want him anymore, which is interesting because, again, we speak about Trump. I didn't know how Trump will be. Like a lot of people for Churchill, they say, we don't want you, you've done some bad move before politically, and now we don't want you. And they say the same about Trump, you've done things was not right and all of that, whatever, he is now in power. And he's the one who is doing the most things. Again, Islam, radical Islam.
Political Islam.
Political Islam, sorry. Because, I agree with you. So what are you doing also here in Israel? Are you also traveling to make the people know about what's happening and make them aware?
I'm doing things via social media, okay, and it's mostly the work I do is towards the non-Israeli public, because most Israelis, if not every Israeli, knows what's going on. So I do it through writing or little interviews like this, just to try and put an end to this obscene injustice.
So, Kay, when I see these horrific things that happen to you, and you had to go through a process inside, first of all, of healing, but also like the trauma, how did you manage? How do you handle the situation? How did you come out as a victor and not as a victim?
It's a big question. Excuse me. First of all, I think this is a lifelong path. All right, it's not like I had a cold and it passed. What's been really important for me, personally, is to maintain my right, and it might shock the Christian viewers, all right, but maintain my right not to forgive, okay? And if I can expand on this, not forgiving murderers does not mean I'm sitting at home every day bitter and, you know me a little bit. People say, I'm in jazz clubs, drinking good wine with friends, hiking the dogs. So I'm not a person consumed with bitterness.
And still open to so many people and working with Muslim and Christian and Jewish people. So it's like, yeah.
But that's a very important definition, because Judaism has its centuries of well thought out arguments about various ethical issues. And to me, this has been very helpful, okay? Now, in Judaism, concerning forgiveness, I would say 99% of the time we are told to forgive, all right? But in my case, we're not talking about somebody cutting me up on the road. Let's say somebody hurt somebody, okay, forgive them. Or there are occasions in Judaism where you have a choice not to forgive, okay? Let's say somebody slandered you, all right? You can't then go and make sure that everybody who believed the lies is now corrected, okay? So your position is, okay, it's your choice. Now, but there is one unique element in Judaism that I found extremely helpful, where we are told that we can't forgive. Not because we don't want to, not that I want to, I don't. I cannot forgive vicariously, okay? And by maintaining my right not to forgive, they haven't even asked for forgiveness. Look, in Christianity too, as I understand it, there are prerequisites for forgiveness, repentance and restitution. All right, these people who try to murder me, and I say people, they're not animals because it exempts them from responsibility if we call them that. We have, or they haven't even asked for forgiveness, okay? Now, that means for me, okay, there is no way that I'm able to forgive what they did to somebody else. The only person who can forgive Christine Lucan for her murder is Christine Lucan. Only Christine can forgive, but she's not here, so we have a problem. So it's an eternal crime, okay? Now, the idea that I direct my unforgiveness just towards the people who did it is what gives me a sense of justice. And that is actually, ironically, what liberates me not to hold every Arab or Muslim accountable for what two thugs did. Okay, now we live in a world, I know it's a hard language, because the worst thing you can do to be today is to be angry, or we mustn't hate. But I think we should hate evil.
Yes, which is totally biblical. You're totally right.
It's also ethical.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
We should hate evil. And if you're going to talk in terms of the master of the universe, God doesn't forgive evil. So if God doesn't do it, why should I do it?
I totally agree. And means that you won't, because of that, you will try to make the world a better place.
We have what I've learned through what happened to me, or what I'm learning rather, is that I don't talk about the why, because I don't know why, and I'm not the center of the universe. These things do happen to other people too. It's more of a question. Okay, this is what has happened. Now, what am I going to do with it to make society a better place? And on one hand, I'm going to befriend those who think differently, of a different creed and colour. And on the other hand, I'm going to do everything in my power that these two cold-blooded murderers will never again see the light of day.
And not have the money.
And not have the money. I mean, they have received thousands and thousands of dollars.
So does it go to them directly or to their family?
There's two funds. One goes straight to their families, and then they also have a little execution stipend, as I like to call it. So that's, for me, that's justice. Trying to stop the funding. I wish the prison conditions were more befitting for murderers. They are, for whatever reason Israel decides, but it's more like a country club. They have table tennis, they have their own canteen, they have cigarettes, they have an education. And that also, for people such as myself, is an incredible injustice. Yes. We want people to pay for their crimes. And that's what we want. And that's okay to say that. That doesn't make me bitter.
No, certainly. So how are you physically? Do you still have a lot of...
Okay, I'll tell you a joke. It will answer the question. And I think you have to be a little Jewish to get this. but there's two, and I can afford to say it as a Jewish person. Two Jewish ladies are in a Jewish restaurant, and the waiter comes up and he says, "Hello, ladies, is anything okay?" So I answer with a quip, but I basically am in pain every time I breathe. All right, now that means that I'm in pain 24/7. But I also see other people who are in much greater pain, people who've had their children murdered, people who are disabled physically, they got no legs. So I count myself fortunate. And my pain is not so much the physical, it's the psychological. You know,
I was going to ask the question after, how is it psychologically?
That doesn't leave me. I hear Christine praying to her God, I hear the grunts of her executioners. You know, that doesn't leave me. It's like we're not built to see what I saw or hear what I heard. And it's a scar, you know, it's like the mark of Cain, but okay, it's also a reminder that I have to keep doing what I'm doing. So that her name won't be forgotten. And also that the whole raison d'etre of their crime would be, you know, jihad. Jihad. The murder of Christians and Jews.
So do you see a future? How do you see the future for Israel?
Bright and shiny.
Wonderful. But they have to fight for that?
Of course, we're fighting all the time. I mean, you know, we have drones coming from Iran. We're squeezed in. We're surrounded by people who would rather have us dead. Okay, but Jewish people, we choose life. We have one of the strongest economies in the world. We're always the first when there's a disaster to go and help other people. And in that sense, Israel is a light to the nations.
Yeah, it is.
I see a great future. And great things are done. It's like a butterfly, isn't it? You know, if you like, what do you call the baby butterfly? Caterpillar. You know, without a struggle, there is no butterfly. So I see Israel like that. We're always going to be struggling. Even the name Israel.
Which, yes, suddenly I always remember.
But we struggle. What do we struggle with? We struggle to choose life, and we always choose life. So how can you not see a bright and happy future?
Wonderful. And do you think? I want to say also to our viewers that you are doing something, but now this is also our story. It's not just your story. And we need to be behind you, and we need to understand what's happening with Islam and that we need to fight. Can you give just very shortly what is the step practically that people can do from their home?
First of all, social media is very, very powerful. I think it's more powerful than the mainstream media, actually. No one with any common sense even believes the stuff they put out on the mainstream media. So although it just sounds a small thing, it's really important to share things on social media. Okay? There's nothing to stop people from making protests. If there's a Islamic radical or political Islamic agenda at a certain place, then get a crowd together. They will be called right-wing and alt-right and fanatics and haters and Nazis. They'll be called everything, but we must stand up and do something. So I'd say social media, get little protests together, noisy protests together. And the other thing, whatever country people are in, you know, write your government. Find out if your country is subsidizing murders, terrorism. Because if you go back to Churchill, you know, he made this quote about you can't appease a crocodile because in the end it's going to, So appeasement is the worst thing that people can do. And being quiet and hoping it all will go away, it's not going to go away. I can guarantee you that.
I totally agree with that. We need to fight it because it's like an octopus coming everywhere and like invading everything.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for coming and
Pleasure.
Explaining things to people, and we wish you the best.
Thank you.
And a good and long life.
Amen. Thank you very much.
And from me and from Kay, bye and see you next week. Shalom, dear friends. Today we are looking at the name shepherd in Hebrew, which is ro'eh. And we can see Abraham and Jacob and Moses and David were shepherds. Now, if you look at the very beautiful psalm that we know very well, the Psalm 23, in this psalm there is 227 letters And when you look at the numeral equivalent, it is the one of bracha, which is blessing. So it's to show again that even in terrible and difficult time, God is there and is pursuing us to be able to bring us blessing, which is to bring us more than what we need. When we look at the psalm, we are going to say it again in Hebrew because we are learning that. We look, the name shepherd is ro'eh, but when is the Lord is my shepherd, is like Adonai ro'i, okay? So we say it, the Lord is my shepherd, Adonai ro'i. I will not lack, I will not want. Lo echsar. And we leave few verses and now we go to the last verses because it's also beautiful and is the verses 6. And this is what he said, surely goodness and mercy shall chase me all the way of my life. Usually we used to say follow, but the name in Hebrew is much stronger and is really pursuing me, chasing me. So God's goodness is chasing me. Let us say it in Hebrew, okay? So, ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chai, all the days of my life. And the last part of the verse is, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, or sometimes we say forever, okay? So, Veshafti, which means I'm sitting, Veshafti, bebet Adonai, in his house, le'ocher yamin. And le'ocher, ocher means long, and yamin means days. So it's like he's giving me some long days to be in his house. So today we look at a very special name, Ro'eh, which means shepherd. And when we say the Lord is my shepherd, we say Adonai Ro'i. And we look also at the name Bracha, which means blessing. So we learn again some beautiful words together and we will see you next week. Bye. Thank you, Kay, again for coming. Thank you for sharing your story. And I hope, dear friends, that you really enjoy and we can make a difference in our life and we can be changing the world together, not just one in the corner. We can be with Kay, we can stand with her, we can do what we need to do for our country and for the next generation. From Kay and from me, bye and see you next week.